welcome back to the Prodi Academy YouTube channel. I'm Michelle, and in today's video we are going to be chatting about how to calculate the cost of making wine. In part 1 we'll be taking a look at the costs associated with winemaking, and in part 2 we will be delving into the valuation methods available surrounding your inventory valuation. So with that said, let's jump straight in. Now, in order to run a profitable winery, it is absolutely vital that you understand how much profit you are making per bottle of wine sold. You'll need to be able to determine and understand what you can sell your wine for and how much the wine costs to produce. Now, whilst the market dictates how much you charge for your wine, you do control how much it costs to make, provided you understand what is included in the costs and you have a mechanism to track it. An accurate calculation of the costs to make your wine increases the likelihood that you will run a profitable winery. And although it sounds like a simple endeavor, there are challenges. So from determining which costs to include to tracking all of these costs throughout the process, getting to a final dollar value does take time and careful consideration. So before we jump into how to value your winery inventory, it's important that we take a look at two key accounting terms. The first being cost of goods produced. Now, this is commonly known as wine in process or cost of inventory, and it includes all costs involved in the process of making your wine, which includes things such as raw materials, services, labor, and overhead allocation. So whether direct or indirect, all costs from planting through to bottling of the wine will be included in your cost of goods produced. The second key term that we need to look at is cost of goods sold. Now, the cost of goods sold is the cost of your wine sold in a specific period, and you'll need to match the cost of the inventory you sold to your revenue. A simple way to put it, for each bottle of wine that you sell, how much did it cost you to make it and get it into the hands of your customer? First up, let's take a look at the direct materials involved in the winemaking process. Now, calculating the material cost is reasonably straightforward, and it is the cost, including all taxes and delivery fees, to acquire your raw materials and to get them to your production area. So raw materials include things such as grapes, as well as packaging costs like your bottles and boxes. While you may initially record the cost of your grapes separately, if you are farming, this will be more complex than if you are buying your grapes. It will be added to the other expenses such as fermentation and cellar costs in order to get you to your bulk wine cost. Direct materials don't include materials consumed in production. So for example, if you've got light bulbs or air filters in your production facility, these will instead fall under manufacturing overhead. We then move on to our second key component, and that is labor in winemaking. So labor, which is required to turn your raw grapes into a finished bottle of wine, will be included in your inventory costs. And you'll want to not only include the salaries and wages of these employees, but also the taxes, payroll taxes, and health benefits. So it is all encompassing, and these will get attributed to your winemaking costs. Owner or executive compensation is more difficult to classify because whilst they are involved in the winemaking process, they are also involved in areas such as administration and finance. But to get around this, for these individuals, you would determine how much of their time is spent in the winemaking process and then allocate or apply a percentage of this to their total payroll costs. In this instance, using a reasonable estimate is also acceptable. We then move on to the third and final key component of our costs, and this is overhead allocations. So your overhead costs are costs that aren't included in your direct materials or direct labor, and these are costs that keep your winery in operation. Now, they're usually aggregated into cost pools and allocated based on the number of wines or the number of bottles of wine that has been produced. So some examples of overhead allocation or overhead costs would include insurance, taxes, building repairs and maintenance, utilities, as well as administrative staff wages. So with your bulk wine, adding expenses for your direct labor as well as overhead costs will get you to the total cost of your finished ready-to-sell wine. Now that we have aggregated and tabulated all of our inventory costs, we will then be moving on to the valuation of our inventory, which we will chat about in part 2. So join us for that when we take a look at the various types of valuation methods available. But as always, we trust you found this video insightful, and should you have any further questions, comments, or suggestions for future content you'd like to see, please feel free to drop it in the comments section below. Please also join us on social media platforms such as LinkedIn, Facebook, or at our website at proteafinancial.com. Protea Academy, striving to achieve better accounting for everyone.